The soul rain hammered against Adiz Okonkwo's apartment window like bullets against glass. At 31, she should have been beyond this. Beyond the loneliness that clawed at her chest at 2 a.m., beyond the desperate ache that made her reach for her phone with trembling fingers. Her therapist's crisis line number glowed on her screen. Dr. Park had said to call any time the nightmares got too bad. Any time the memories of that night in Lagos threatened to drown her. But Adiz couldn't bring herself to call. Couldn't bear to hear the practiced sympathy in Dr. Park's voice again. So she did something she'd never done before. She texted instead. Baby, I'm horny. Not for sex. For violence. For revenge. For something to make me feel alive instead of this hollow thing pretending to be human. I want to hurt the people who hurt me. I want to watch them bleed. Is that what makes me a monster? Her thumb hovered over send. This was crossing every professional boundary. Dr. Park would probably drop her as a patient. But the words needed to leave her body, needed to exist somewhere outside her own skull. She pressed send. The message whooshed into the digital void. Adiz set the phone down and pulled her knees to her chest. Her Cornell Law sweatshirt, faded and worn, providing little comfort against the memories that always came at night. 7 years. 7 years since she'd come home to find her family slaughtered in their Lagos home. Her father, a federal judge who'd refused to take bribes. Her mother, a surgeon. Her baby brother, only 16, who tried to fight back. The Black Axe gang had made it look like a robbery. But Adiz knew. She'd seen the calling card they left. A black axe spray-painted on her father's chamber's wall. She'd spent 7 years becoming the weapon she needed. Law degree from Cornell. Prosecutor training with the Nigerian EFCC. Interpol recruitment. And now, finally, she was in Seoul working on the biggest RICO case of her career, dismantling the very networks that supplied weapons to gangs like Black Axe. Her phone buzzed. Adiz grabbed it, expecting Dr. Park's professional concern. Instead, the response made her blood run cold. Unknown number. You transposed 2 digits. I'm not your therapist, but I understand wanting to hurt the people who hurt you. I felt that hunger. The question isn't whether it makes you a monster. The question is whether you can live with what happens after you feed it. Oh God, wrong number. Adiz's prosecutor instincts kicked in immediately. She checked the number, Korean, Seoul area code. She'd copied Dr. Park's new office number from a business card. Must have gotten a digit wrong. I'm so sorry. Please delete this and forget you ever saw it. This was meant for my therapist. The response came almost immediately. Why would I delete the most honest thing anyone said to me in years? Tell me about them. The people who hurt you. Adiz should have blocked the number. Should have reported the breach to whom? Her own stupidity wasn't a crime. But something about the response, the lack of judgment, the recognition in those words, made her fingers move across the screen. They killed my family. 7 years ago. Made it look random, but it wasn't. My father was a judge. He said no to the wrong people. And you've spent 7 years hunting them. How did you know? Because I would have done the same thing. I am doing the same thing just from a different angle. 7,000 meters away, in a penthouse overlooking Gangnam, Choi Woo-jin stared at his phone screen with an expression that would have terrified his subordinates. At 35, he was the underboss of the Jopik Syndicate's Seoul operations, the man they called the accountant because he made problems disappear without a trace, balancing the books in blood. His apartment was minimalist, cold, everything in its place. Control was survival in his world. But this text had shattered his carefully maintained equilibrium. Boss! Im Sang-hoon, his lieutenant, stood near the door reviewing security reports. The shipment from Busan arrives tomorrow. Do you want extra men at the port? No, Woo-jin's eyes never left the screen. Maintain normal coverage. Anything unusual draws attention. Sang-hoon hesitated. The prosecutor, Okonkwo, she's been accessing port records. Her team knows something. Woo-jin's jaw tightened. Adiz Okonkwo, the Interpol prosecutor who'd been building a case against his organization for 8 months. Brilliant, relentless, incorruptible. She was 3 weeks away from presenting evidence that would bring down half the Jopik leadership. Evidence that Wu Jin himself had been carefully compiling and feeding to Interpol through an encrypted channel for the past 2 years. Let her access what she needs, Wu Jin said quietly. That's insane. She's trying to destroy us. She's trying to destroy criminals. There's a difference. Wu Jin stood and walked to the window. Make sure the Busan shipment is clean. No complications. After Sang-hoon left, Wu Jin returned to his phone. He should ignore this mystery woman. Should delete the text and forget it ever happened. His therapy sessions, court-mandated after his 3rd arrest, though no charges ever stuck, had taught him about boundaries. But something about her raw honesty, her naked pain, called to the part of him he kept buried deep. The part that remembered being 8 years old, sold by his own uncle to pay gambling debts, raised inside the syndicate like a weapon being forged. He typed carefully. What's your name? A long pause. Then, I can't tell you that. You're a stranger who now knows I have violent fantasies about revenge. Fair. I'm a stranger who shares those fantasies. But I've learned something in my years of hunting. Revenge doesn't fill the hole. It just makes it deeper. So what does fill it? I'm still trying to figure that out. Maybe we can figure it out together. Just 2 strangers in the dark, being honest about the monsters we're becoming. Adiz stared at the message for a long time. This was insane. She was an Interpol prosecutor texting with a complete stranger about murder and revenge at 2 a.m. But for the first time in 7 years, someone wasn't telling her to let it go, move on, forgive. Someone understood the hunger that lived in her bones. Why are you awake at 2 a.m.? She typed. Same as you probably. The nightmares don't care about office hours. What are yours about? A boy who had choices taken from him. A man trying to take them back. What are yours about? Adiz's hands trembled as she typed. Coming home. Finding them. My baby brother tried to text me. I was in class taking a corporate law exam. He died while I was writing about fiduciary duty. You carry that like it's your fault, isn't it? If I'd answered, if I'd been there, you'd be dead too. And whoever did this would still be breathing. But you're alive. You're hunting them. That's not guilt. That's purpose. Tears streamed down Adiz's face. How did the stranger see her so clearly? They texted through the night, neither sharing names, neither revealing too much. Just 2 wounded people finding unexpected connection across the digital void. Wu Jin told her about loss and survival, about building something from ashes, about the weight of protecting people who depended on him. He didn't mention the syndicate, didn't explain that his business involved things that would make her prosecute him without hesitation. Adiz told her about her crusade against organized crime, about her master's thesis on dismantling transnational criminal networks, about wanting to see the people who supplied weapons to gangs like Black Axe face justice. She didn't mention she was 3 weeks from the biggest prosecution of her career. When dawn broke over Seoul, Adiz finally asked, "Why are you being so kind to a stranger who sent you a completely inappropriate text by mistake?" The response came after a long pause. Maybe some mistakes are fate in disguise. Maybe we were both supposed to be awake at 2 a.m. Maybe this is the universe saying you're not alone in the dark. Adiz smiled for the first time in weeks. That's almost poetic for a stranger. Don't spread that around. I have a reputation to maintain. What kind of reputation? The kind where people don't expect poetry. She laughed, actually laughed, and it felt like breaking through ice. If you're already hooked by Adiz and this mysterious stranger's connection, do me a favor, hit that like button right now. Because trust me, this story is about to get insane. And if you want to see where this forbidden connection leads, subscribe and turn on notifications. You do not want to miss what happens when these 2 finally meet face to face. Drop a comment telling me, would you text a stranger at 2 a.m. like this? Let's go. 3 days later, Adiz stood in the Seoul Central District Courthouse, reviewing her notes before the biggest hearing of her career. Her tailored black suit was armor, her natural hair pulled back in a sleek bun, her game face firmly in place. The RICO case against the Jopik syndicate had consumed 8 months of her life. Wiretaps, financial records, witness testimony. She'd built an airtight case against the organization responsible for weapons trafficking across 4 continents. Weapons that ended up in the hands of gangs like Black Axe. This wasn't just about justice. This was about cutting off the supply chain that had armed her family's killers. Prosecutor Okonkwo, her assistant, Jean Young, appeared at her elbow. The defendants are entering the courtroom. Adiz took a deep breath and gathered her files. She'd done this dozens of times. Criminal trials were her arena, her battlefield, the place where she channeled her rage into something productive. But as she walked into the courtroom, nothing could have prepared her for what happened next. The defendants filed in with their lawyers, 6 men in expensive suits, faces carefully neutral. And at the center, the alleged underboss whose testimony could bring down the entire network. Choi Woo-jin. Their eyes met across the courtroom. The world stopped. Adiz knew that face. Not from case files or surveillance photos, though she'd reviewed hundreds. She knew it from somewhere deeper, more recent. And then it hit her with the force of a freight train. The scar on his left hand, visible in their video calls when he gestured while talking. The bookshelf behind him in one video, Korean legal texts mixed with philosophy. The way he said purpose in that specific tone. The stranger she'd been texting for 3 days, pouring out her soul to, sharing her darkest thoughts with, was the underboss of the organization she was prosecuting. Woo Jin's expression confirmed he'd reached the same devastating realization. The prosecutor hunting his organization was the woman who'd accidentally texted him at 2 a.m. The woman whose vulnerability and honesty had cracked something open in him that he'd thought was sealed forever. Time resumed its normal pace. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The hearing began. But Adiz couldn't hear anything over the roaring in her ears. Her carefully constructed world had just shattered into pieces too sharp to reassemble. The hearing was a blur. Adiz operated on autopilot, presenting her opening arguments with mechanical precision while her mind reeled. Across the courtroom, Woo Jin sat perfectly still, his expression unreadable, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. When the judge called a recess, Adiz barely made it to the bathroom before her legs gave out. She locked herself in a stall and tried to breathe through the panic. She'd been texting with a criminal. Not just any criminal, the underboss of the organization she was trying to destroy. The man whose testimony she needed to secure convictions. Every text, every vulnerable confession, every moment of connection. It was all with someone who represented everything she'd spent 7 years fighting against. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, but she knew who it was. We need to talk. Not as prosecutor and defendant. As the 2 people who were honest with each other in the dark. There's nothing to talk about. You're a criminal. I'm prosecuting you. I'm the criminal who's been feeding evidence to Interpol for 2 years. Check your encrypted tip line. Source designation. Phoenix. That's me. Adiz's blood ran cold. Phoenix was their most valuable source, the insider who'd provided shipping manifests, financial records, organizational charts. Phoenix's intelligence had been the foundation of her entire case. You're lying. Tomorrow's shipment at Busan Port. Container 447B. Is supposed to contain automotive parts. Actually contains North Korean weapons components bound for Lagos. Phoenix tipped Interpol about it 3 weeks ago. That tip came from me. Only her immediate team knew about that shipment. And Phoenix had indeed provided that intelligence. Why? Because I'm trying to destroy the same thing you are. I just have to do it from the inside without getting killed in the process. That night, Adiz did something that could cost her career. She agreed to meet him. Neutral ground. A 24-hour cafe in Itaewon, where expats and insomniacs mingled at 3 a.m. Public enough to be safe, private enough to talk. She arrived first, choosing a corner table where she could watch the entrance. When Wu Jin walked in, dressed in casual black instead of his courtroom suit, she was struck by how different he looked. Younger, more human, carrying the same exhaustion she saw in her own mirror. He sat across from her, and for a long moment, they just stared at each other. "This is insane," Adiz said finally. "Agreed. I should have you arrested for witness tampering. Except we both know this isn't tampering. This was," he paused, "an accident that feels like fate. Don't." Her voice was sharp. "Don't romanticize this. You're a criminal. Your organization traffics weapons that kill people. People like my family." Wu Jin flinched. "I know what my organization does. I've spent 18 years living inside it, watching it destroy lives, including my own. So you expect me to feel sorry for you? No. I expect you to hear the truth." He pulled out a tablet, slid it across the table. "I was 8 when my uncle sold me to the Jopik to pay off gambling debts. I didn't choose this life. I was raised in it, trained for it, molded into it like a weapon being forged." The tablet showed files, years of them, financial records, communications, operational details. "For 2 years, I've been building a case against my own organization from the inside. Phoenix isn't some outside source. It's me, committing slow suicide by trying to take down the only family I've ever known." Adiz scrolled through the files, her prosecutor's mind racing. The level of detail, the insider knowledge, this was genuine. Phoenix wasn't an informant. Phoenix was a man trying to destroy himself to stop the monster he'd become part of. "Why?" she whispered. Wu Jin's eyes were haunted. 5 years ago, I was sent to Lagos. Business expansion. I was supposed to establish supply routes, make connections with local gangs, including Black Axe. Adiz's hands froze on the tablet. "I met your father," Wu Jin continued, his voice barely audible. "Judge Okonkwo. He was investigating Black Axe's weapons suppliers. He asked to meet with me, thought I was a legitimate businessman. I liked him. He reminded me of what my own father might have been like before the gambling destroyed him." "Stop." Adiz's voice broke. "He offered me protection if I testified about the weapons pipeline. I said I'd think about it. That night, Black Axe found out about his investigation. They asked me about the meeting." Tears streamed down Adiz's face. "What did you tell them?" "I told them he was just a nosy judge with no real evidence. That he was harmless." Wu Jin's voice cracked. "I thought I was protecting him by downplaying the threat. Instead, Black Axe decided to send a message to other harmless judges who might get ideas about investigating." The cafe spun around Adiz. This man, this criminal she'd been texting with, sharing her soul with, had been in Lagos when her family was murdered, had met her father, had inadvertently triggered the chain of events that led to that horrible night. "They killed him because of you," she said numbly. "They killed him because of me." Wu Jin agreed, agony in every word. "And your mother, and your brother. 3 people died because I made the wrong choice, said the wrong thing, thought I could play both sides without consequences. You should have told them the truth. Should have let them know he was a real threat. Then they would have killed him anyway, and tortured him first to find out what he knew. At least this way it was fast. They didn't suffer." Adiz's hand flew before she could stop it, slapping him across the face with all the force of 7 years of grief and rage. The sound cracked through the cafe. A few patrons looked over, but this was Seoul at 3 a.m. Strange things happened, and people minded their business. Wu Jin didn't flinch, didn't fight back. He just took it like he'd been expecting it, like he deserved it. "I've spent 2 years trying to make it right," he said quietly. "I can't bring them back, can't undo what happened, but I can destroy the network that made it possible. That's why I became Phoenix. That's why I've been feeding you everything you need to take down not just Jopik, but every organization in the pipeline, including Black Axe. Why should I believe you? Because you already do. Because you've seen my evidence. Because you know me. He met her eyes. Not the defendant in your courtroom. Not the underboss. Me. The person who texted you at 2 a.m. The one who understands what it means to want revenge so badly it hollows you out. Adiz wanted to scream, to hit him again, to run. But she stayed frozen, staring at this impossible man who was both her enemy and her unexpected ally. Both the person who'd inadvertently helped kill her family and the one who'd been working to bring their killers to justice. What do you want from me? She asked. Help me finish what I started. Your case is strong, but it's not complete. The evidence I've given you will convict the mid-level operators, but the real power, the people at the top who ordered your father's death, they're insulated. Untouchable. Unless we work together. You from the outside, me from the inside. I can get you access to the real decision makers. The ones who ordered the Lagos massacre. But Adiz. His voice dropped even lower. If we do this, if I give you everything, they'll know it was me. The syndicate will kill me. Slowly. Painfully. They'll make an example of me that will echo through every organization in Asia. So you're asking me to help you commit suicide. I'm asking you to help me do something meaningful with the death that's coming anyway. I've been a dead man walking since the day I became Phoenix. At least this way, it matters. Pause. If your heart is racing right now, if you need to know what Adiz decides, smash that subscribe button because this story is about to go to places you cannot imagine. We're talking forbidden partnerships, courtroom explosions, and a romance that will literally break your heart. Comment below, Team Woojin or Team Justice, and hit like if you're as conflicted as Adiz right now. Let's continue. Adiz spent 3 days wrestling with the decision. Everything she'd built her career on said to walk away, report Woojin to her superiors, let the case proceed as planned. But the prosecutor in her knew he was right. Her current evidence would net mid-level convictions, important but not enough. The people who'd actually ordered her family's execution would remain untouched, protected by layers of insulation and plausible deniability. Woojin could give her those people. On the 4th day, she encrypted her response. I'm in, but we do this my way. You give me everything, names, locations, financial trails. And when it's over, you testify in open court. You face what you've done. Agreed. One more thing. No more personal texts. This is strictly professional. What happened between us before, the connection, the conversations, that ends now. A long pause before his response. Of course. Strictly professional. But the ache in her chest suggested it was already too late for strictly professional. They met in secret, abandoned warehouses, hotel rooms rented under fake names, secure locations that Woojin's enemies wouldn't monitor. Each meeting was a masterclass in controlled tension. Woojin provided names. Lee Sang-min, the Jopik boss who'd personally approved the Lagos operation. Kwon Ji-hoon, the Chinese middleman who'd supplied the weapons to Black Axe. And the one that made Adiz's blood boil, Marcus Akoli, the Nigerian colonel who'd accepted bribes to look the other way while weapons flooded into Lagos. Akoli protected Black Axe for years, Woojin explained during one midnight meeting, spreading financial records across a hotel room desk. Your father's investigation would have exposed him. That's why Black Axe acted so quickly and decisively. It wasn't just about silencing your father. It was about protecting their government connection. Adiz's hands shook as she photographed the documents. Colonel Akoli had attended her father's funeral, had offered condolences to her mother's family, had pledged to find the killers, all while knowing exactly who they were and protecting them. I want him, she said through gritted teeth. I want all of them, but I want him most of all. You'll have him. But Adiz. Woojin caught her wrist gently. When this breaks, when the arrests happen, Akoli will know the evidence came from inside the organization. He'll retaliate. Your family in Nigeria, already relocated under Interpol protection. I moved them 2 years ago when I started this case. She pulled her hand away, ignoring the warmth of his touch. I've thought 10 steps ahead. Have you? I've thought exactly 1 step ahead. Survive long enough to give you what you need. Their eyes met, and the air between them crackled with everything they weren't saying. The connection they'd formed before the truth came out still existed, complicated now by betrayal and shared purpose. Why did you text me back that first night? Adiz asked. The real reason. Wu Jin was quiet for a long moment. Because your honesty was intoxicating. No one in my world speaks truth. Everything is layers, manipulation, survival. But you, at 2 a.m., you just laid yourself bare. I wanted to know what that felt like. To be honest with someone. And now I know it feels like drowning and breathing at the same time. He stood, putting necessary distance between them. We should focus on the case. But as they worked through the night, building the prosecution that would shake 3 continents, they both knew this was more than professional. Every accidental touch, every shared look, every moment of synchronized thinking as they anticipated each other's next move. It was intimacy wearing the mask of collaboration. 6 weeks into their secret partnership, everything went wrong. Adiz was in her Interpol office, reviewing the latest financial records Wu Jin had provided, when Jin Young burst through the door, face pale. We have a problem. Someone leaked information about Phoenix's identity to the Jopik leadership. Adiz's world tilted. What? How? We don't know. But Boss Lee knows he has a traitor. He's called an emergency meeting of all senior members tonight. If Wu Jin shows up, he's walking into an execution. Adiz was already grabbing her phone, texting the encrypted number. Don't go to the meeting. They know. Get out now. No response. She tried calling. Straight to voicemail. Jin Young, I need a tactical team. Now. For what? We can't just raid a private meeting without. I don't care about protocol. If Wu Jin dies, our entire case dies with him. Every name, every connection, every piece of evidence we don't have documented yet disappears. That was the professional justification. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. She couldn't let him die. Not now. Not like this. Jin Young made the calls. Within 30 minutes, Adiz was in body armor, riding in an unmarked van with a Korean National Police tactical unit toward the luxury hotel in Gangnam where the meeting was scheduled. This is insane, Lieutenant Park said, checking his weapon. We're raiding a meeting of organized crime leadership on the word of a prosecutor who won't explain her source. Trust me, Adiz said, though her hands were shaking. If we don't move now, we lose everything. They stormed the hotel's private banquet room with military precision. Adiz's heart hammered as the doors burst open. The room was empty except for one person. Wu Jin sat calmly at the head of a long table, hands folded, looking like he'd been waiting for her. Where are they? Adiz demanded, pulling off her helmet. I sent them away. Told them the meeting location changed at the last minute due to a security concern. His eyes were dark, unreadable. I got your text. Then why didn't you respond? Why didn't you run? Because I needed you to see something. He stood, and that's when Adiz noticed the laptop open in front of him. I sent the evidence to myself. All of it. Every file, every document, every piece of testimony you need. It's all right here, uploaded to a secure server with instructions to release to Interpol if I don't check in every 24 hours. I don't understand. The leak came from inside Interpol. Adiz. Someone on your team is compromised. They told Boss Lee about Phoenix, probably hoping he'd eliminate me before I could testify. But they didn't count on me having an insurance policy. Adiz felt sick. Who? I don't know yet. But they've been watching you. They know we're working together. They know about our meetings. He stepped closer, ignoring the dozen guns pointed at him. Adiz, you're in danger now too. If they're willing to burn Phoenix to protect the organization, they'll come for you next. Let them come. Don't be stupid. You're brilliant and brave, but you're not bulletproof. These people will kill you and make it look like an accident. A car crash, a robbery, a random attack in a parking garage. So what do you suggest? I just abandon 8 months of work because there's a mole? No. We accelerate. We make the arrests now, before whoever's compromised can warn the targets. Hit everyone simultaneously, Seoul, Lagos, Beijing, all at once. No time to run, no time to destroy evidence. Lieutenant Park stepped forward. That would require coordination across multiple agencies and countries. The logistics alone are already in place, Wu Jin interrupted. I've spent 2 years setting up this moment. I have contacts in every relevant agency. People who owe me favors, people I've protected, people who want to see the networks burn as much as you do. Say the word, Prosecutor Okonkwo, and I'll make the calls. Adiz stared at him. This criminal, this man who'd inadvertently helped kill her family, was offering to mobilize an international takedown that would risk his life and everyone connected to him. Why? She whispered. Why risk everything? Because you asked me at 2 a.m. what fills the hole that revenge creates. His voice was raw, honest. This fills it. Not perfectly, not completely. But when I'm with you, when we're building this case together, when I think about your father's killers finally facing justice, I feel something other than emptiness. I feel purpose. You gave me that. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Make the calls, Adiz said. The next 72 hours were a blur of coordinated chaos. Interpol, Korean National Police, Nigerian EFCC, Chinese Ministry of Public Security, all moving simultaneously based on Phoenix's intelligence and Adiz's prosecutorial framework. In Seoul, boss Lee Sang-min was arrested while eating breakfast with his family. In Lagos, Colonel Akoli was taken from his office in handcuffs, his fellow officers watching in shock. In Beijing, Kwon Ji-hoon was pulled from a business meeting and extradited before he could lawyer up. And in the Seoul warehouse district, Wu Jin orchestrated the final piece. A meeting with the remaining Jopic leadership where he revealed himself as Phoenix. You're a traitor. One of them spat. We raised you, fed you, protected you. You bought me, Wu Jin corrected. Like property. You took a child and turned him into a weapon. Now that weapon has turned on you. Call it karma. Call it justice. Call it whatever helps you sleep in prison. They tried to kill him, of course. But Adiz's tactical team was waiting, hidden, ready. The arrests were clean, documented, by the book. When it was over, when all the targets were in custody and the evidence secured, Adiz found Wu Jin on the warehouse roof, staring out at the Seoul skyline. It's done, she said quietly. Phase 1 is done. The trials will take years. Appeals, motions, legal maneuvering. I know. I'll be prosecuting in 3 different countries simultaneously. She stood beside him, close but not touching. You'll have to testify, repeatedly. Your life as you knew it is over. My life as I knew it has been over since I was 8 years old. Maybe now I get to find out who I actually am when I'm not being what they made me. They stood in silence, watching the sun rise over the city. I should hate you, Adiz said finally. For Lagos, for my father, for everything. You should, but I don't. I should, but I don't, and I don't know what to do with that. Wu Jin turned to face her. I can't undo what happened. Can't bring them back. Can't erase my part in it, even if it was unintentional. But Adiz, I can promise you this. I will spend the rest of my life, however long that is, trying to make the world a little less dark. Starting with testifying against everyone who's ever trafficked a weapon, taken a bribe, or ordered a hit. That's not redemption. I know. Redemption isn't possible for people like me. But maybe it's enough to try anyway. Adi's hand found his. The touch was electric, complicated, loaded with everything they'd been through. When the trials are over, she said slowly, when you've testified and served whatever reduced sentence your cooperation earns you, and when I've prosecuted everyone who needs prosecuting. Yes. Find me, if you're still alive, if you still want to figure out what fills the hole. Find me, and we'll see if two broken people can build something that isn't broken. Wu Jin's fingers tightened on hers. That's a long time to wait. Good things are worth waiting for. And Wu Jin. She met his eyes. I need the time to process this, to understand what I feel, to know if what's between us is real or just trauma bonding and shared purpose. Fair. He lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. But Adiz, I already know what I feel. I fell for you at 2 a.m. when you sent a wrong text to a stranger. I fell deeper when you chose justice over safety. And I fell completely when you gave me a reason to be something more than the weapon they made me. Tears streamed down Adiz's face. Don't make this harder than it already is. I'm not trying to. I'm just being honest. Like we were in the beginning. They stood together on that rooftop as Seoul woke up around them. Two people who'd found each other by accident and built something extraordinary from their shared pain. Hold up. If you're feeling all the emotions right now, if you're torn between heartbreak and hope, if you need to know what happens next, hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. Because the story doesn't end here, and you're going to want to be here for part 2. Drop a comment, Team Second Chance or Team Move On, and smash like if this story has you in your feelings. Now let's see what happens next. 3 years later, the International Criminal Court in The Hague was packed with journalists, legal observers, and family members of victims. The trial of Lee Sang-min and his co-conspirators had taken 3 years of legal wrangling, but finally, the verdicts were being read. Adiz sat in the prosecutor's section, her navy suit perfectly pressed, her natural hair now shoulder-length and worn in goddess locks. At 34, she'd become the youngest lead prosecutor in ICC history for a transnational organized crime case. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, she'd spent 3 years building this case, traveling between Seoul, Lagos, and The Hague. 3 years of depositions, witness testimonies, legal battles. 3 years of waking up at 2 a.m., not from nightmares anymore, but from dreams of a scarred face and dark eyes that understood her in ways no one else ever had. Guilty. The word echoed through the courtroom. One by one, the verdicts came down. Lee Sang-min, guilty on 18 counts. Kwon Ji-hoon, guilty on 22 counts. And the one that made Adiz's breath catch, Colonel Marcus Akoli, guilty on 15 counts, including conspiracy to commit murder in the deaths of Judge Okonkwo, Dr. Okonkwo, and David Okonkwo. Her family's names, spoken aloud in open court. Their deaths acknowledged not as random violence, but as murder. Premeditated, calculated, and now finally punished. Adiz closed her eyes and let the tears fall. 7 years of hunting had led to this moment. Justice. Real, tangible, documented justice. After the verdicts, after the press conferences and the congratulations from colleagues, Adiz found herself alone in her hotel room overlooking the North Sea. Her phone sat on the nightstand, silent. For 3 years, she and Wu Jin had maintained radio silence. He testified, devastating, detailed testimony that had been the cornerstone of her case. She'd watched from the prosecutor's table as he laid bare every operation, every conspiracy, every crime he'd been part of or witnessed. His testimony had earned him a reduced sentence. 8 years in a Korean federal prison, with parole eligibility after 5 for extraordinary cooperation with international law enforcement. He was 3 years into that sentence now. 2 more years until parole. Adiz had told herself she wouldn't wait. Had dated a few times, a doctor, a fellow prosecutor, a human rights lawyer. Good men. Safe men. Men who'd never killed anyone or trafficked weapons or lived in the shadows. But none of them understood her. Not the way Wu Jin had in those midnight texts and secret meetings. None of them saw the darkness she carried and loved her anyway. None of them made her feel alive. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, but she knew immediately. I heard about the verdicts. You did it. Your father would be proud. Her hands trembled as she typed back. We did it. Your testimony made the difference. I just told the truth. You built the case that made the truth matter. How are you? A long pause. Alive. Surviving. Reading a lot. They have a surprisingly decent law library. I'm working on a degree in international human rights law. Figured I should understand what I violated so thoroughly. Despite everything, Adiz smiled. That's very you. I've had a lot of time to think. About choices, consequences, who I was and who I could be. And I keep coming back to that rooftop. To what you said about finding each other when this was over. Does that offer still stand? Adiz stared at the message for a long time. This was her chance to walk away clean. To close this chapter and move forward with someone uncomplicated. Someone whose past wouldn't haunt them both. But her fingers typed the truth before her mind could stop them. 2 more years. Serve your time. Earn your parole. And yes, find me. 2 more years. I can do that. Adiz? Yes? Thank you. For seeing me as more than what I was. For giving me a reason to become something better. Thank you for the same. They texted through the night, carefully, aware that his communications were monitored, but finding ways to say what mattered. He told her about his classes, his therapy sessions, his work teaching other inmates to read. She told him about her life, her work, the nonprofit she'd started helping African women pursue legal education. As dawn broke over The Hague, Adiz felt something she hadn't felt in years. Genuine hope. Not the desperate hope of that first wrong text, but solid, grounded certainty that some connections were worth waiting for. 18 months later, the Korean parole board hearing was closed to the public, but Adiz sat in the observation section, having flown from Geneva specifically for this. Wu Jin looked different. His hair was shorter, streaked with gray at the temples despite being only 38. Prison had carved away any softness, leaving him leaner, harder. But his eyes, when they found hers across the room, still held that same recognition, that same connection. The parole board questioned him extensively. Mr. Choi, you've served 4.5 years of an 8-year sentence. Your cooperation with international authorities has been extraordinary. But the question remains, how can we be certain you've genuinely reformed and won't return to criminal activity? Wu Jin's voice was steady. I can't offer certainty. I can only offer evidence. I've completed 2 university degrees while incarcerated, 1 in international law, 1 in conflict resolution. I've taught literacy classes to 47 fellow inmates. I've worked with law enforcement in 6 countries to dismantle networks I once helped build. That speaks to remorse and cooperation. But rehabilitation. Rehabilitation isn't something I can prove with words. It's something I'll have to demonstrate through actions if you grant me parole. He paused. I was 8 years old when I lost the ability to choose my own path. For 30 years, I lived inside a system that required violence, deception, and moral compromise just to survive. Prison gave me something I never had before. Time to figure out who I am when I'm not being what others made me. The man I discovered is someone who wants to spend the rest of his life preventing other children from being sold, exploited, and turned into weapons. The board deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned, the chairwoman's face was unreadable. Mr. Choi, this board recognizes the extraordinary nature of your cooperation and the genuine efforts you've made toward rehabilitation. We also recognize that your testimony and continued assistance has resulted in the prosecution of 127 individuals involved in transnational organized crime, the disruption of weapons trafficking networks on 4 continents, and the recovery of over $2 billion in illicit funds. Wu Jin stood perfectly still, barely breathing. Parole is granted, effective immediately with conditions. You will remain under supervision for the duration of your sentence. You will continue cooperating with international law enforcement. You will maintain employment and stable housing. Any violation will result in immediate reincarceration. Do you understand these terms? I understand. Thank you. As the hearing concluded and Wu Jin was processed for release, Adiz waited outside the prison gates. The Seoul winter air was bitter, but she barely felt it. When he finally emerged, carrying a single bag with his belongings, he stopped several feet away from her, as if afraid to come closer, as if she might disappear if he moved too fast. Hi, he said simply. Hi yourself. Adiz's voice trembled despite her best efforts to stay composed. They stared at each other across the distance. 4.5 years of separation, countless texts and monitored phone calls, and all the complicated history that had brought them to this moment. You came, Wu Jin said, like he couldn't quite believe it. I said I would. When it was over, when you'd served your time. She took a step closer. I keep my promises too. It's been 4.5 years. You could have changed your mind. Should have changed your mind. I dated other people, Adiz admitted. Tried to move on. Told myself what we had was just trauma bonding and shared purpose in extreme circumstances. And I was lying to myself. She closed the distance between them, standing close enough to see the new scars on his hands, the gray in his hair, the weight of years in his eyes. Because none of them made me feel what I felt that first night at 2 a.m. None of them understood the darkness I carry. None of them saw me completely and loved me anyway. Adiz, his voice broke. I don't have anything to offer you. No money, no status, no safety. I'm a convicted felon on parole with a target on my back from every organization I helped bring down. My life expectancy is probably measured in months, not years. Getting involved with me is... She kissed him. After 4.5 years of waiting, wondering, hoping. She kissed him right there outside the prison gates, with guards watching and traffic passing and the whole complicated world spinning around them. Wu Jin froze for a heartbeat. Then his arms came around her like he was drowning and she was air. The kiss was desperate, fierce, filled with years of longing and loss and the terrifying hope that maybe, just maybe, two broken people could build something whole. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Adiz pressed her forehead to his. I don't need you to offer me anything, she whispered. I need you to be honest with me, to see me, to understand me. Everything else we'll figure out together. Together? He repeated, like the word was foreign and precious. I've been alone so long I forgot what that word means. Then let me remind you. The next 6 months were an exercise in learning each other outside of crisis and conspiracy. Wu Jin moved into a small apartment in Itaewon, the same neighborhood where they'd had that first devastating conversation years ago. He worked with a restorative justice nonprofit, counseling at-risk youth who were being recruited by gangs, using his own story as a cautionary tale. Adiz split her time between Geneva and Seoul, prosecuting cases for the ICC while building her nonprofit. They video called constantly when she traveled, making up for lost time with late-night conversations that echoed those first texts. But being together in person was different, harder, more real. Wu Jin had nightmares, violent ones where he woke up swinging, trapped in memories of things he'd done and things done to him. Adiz had her own demons. Panic attacks when she smelled certain colognes that reminded her of crime scenes, hypervigilance in crowds, inability to trust easily. They learned each other's triggers, learned how to hold each other through the darkness, learned that healing wasn't linear and love wasn't simple, but both were possible. Tell me about your brother, Wu Jin said one night, lying in bed with Adiz's head on his chest. You've told me about your parents, but not much about David. Adiz was quiet for a long moment. He wanted to be an engineer, was obsessed with building things, bridges, computers, anything he could take apart and reconstruct. He was only 16, but he was already getting recruitment letters from universities. He sounds brilliant. He was. And funny. He used to tease me mercilessly about my boyfriends. Said none of them were good enough for his big sister. Her voice cracked. He tried to fight them. The men who came. His last text to me said, "They're here, sis. I'm scared, but I'm going to protect Mom." He was 16 years old, and he tried to protect our mother from armed killers. Wu Jin's arms tightened around her. He was brave, like his sister. I wasn't there. I was taking an exam about corporate fiduciary duty while my baby brother was dying. You were surviving, so you could do exactly what you've done, bring his killers to justice. He'd be proud of you, Adiz. They all would be. She cried then, the way she'd needed to cry for years. And Wu Jin held her, offering no platitudes, no promises that it would stop hurting. Just presence, just understanding, just love. But the past had a way of refusing to stay buried. 8 months after Wu Jin's release, Adiz received a package at her Seoul apartment. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. It showed her and Wu Jin at a cafe, taken from across the street. On the back, a message in Korean. Phoenix sang, "Now the ashes will burn." Her blood ran cold. She immediately called Wu Jin. "We have a problem." Within the hour, they were at the Korean National Police headquarters with Lieutenant Park, who'd been promoted to head of Organized Crime Task Force. "This is a death threat," Park said, studying the photo. "Direct retaliation for Wu Jin's testimony. We'll provide protection." "Protection didn't stop them before," Wu Jin interrupted. "And it won't stop them now. These are professionals. If they want me dead, I'm dead. It's just a matter of time." "So what do you suggest?" Adiz demanded, her prosecutor mind racing through scenarios. "We just wait for them to make a move?" "No, we move first." Wu Jin's expression was grim. "There are still networks we didn't dismantle. Smaller organizations that survived the prosecutions. They're angry, scattered, looking for revenge and trying to rebuild. If we can identify them." "Absolutely not." Adiz cut him off. "You are not going undercover again. You're on parole. One violation and you go back to prison. If I don't do something, I'll be dead anyway. At least this way, it means something. It means you're using yourself as bait. I've always been bait, Adiz. From the moment I became Phoenix." His voice was calm, resigned. "The only question is whether my death serves a purpose or not." The argument that followed was their first real fight. Loud, angry, filled with all the fear and frustration they'd been holding back. "I didn't wait 4.5 years for you just to watch you commit suicide," Adiz shouted. "And I didn't survive 30 years in the syndicate just to hide while they hunt you too," Wu Jin shot back. "Because that's what this is, Adiz. That photo isn't just a threat against me. It's a threat against you. Being with me makes you a target. I've been a target since the day I became a prosecutor. I don't need you to protect me. I know you don't need it, but I'm going to do it anyway, because that's what you do for people you love. You stand between them and the darkness, even if it costs you everything." The word hung between them. Love. They danced around it for months, implied it, shown it through actions. But neither had said it directly. "You love me," Adiz whispered. "Of course I love you. I've loved you since you sent a wrong text at 2 a.m. looking for someone to see you. I've loved you through every case, every testimony, every moment of this impossible situation. And I love you enough to make sure you survive this, even if I don't." Adiz crossed to him, grabbed his face in both hands. "Then you love me enough to live, to fight with me, not for me. We're partners, Wu Jin. That's what you said on the rooftop. So we handle this together, as partners." Something shifted in his expression. "Together. Together. Okay. I need you to pause and do something for me. If this story has you absolutely wrecked right now, If you're invested in Adi's and Woojin's survival, if you need to know how this ends, subscribe immediately. Hit that notification bell, because what comes next is going to blow your mind. Comment below. Could you forgive someone like Woojin? Could you love someone that dangerous? And smash that like button if you believe love is worth fighting for, even when the odds are impossible. Let's finish this story. They developed a plan with Lieutenant Park and Interpol. Instead of waiting for the scattered organizations to strike, they draw them out with carefully leaked information that Phoenix was cooperating on a new investigation. One that would expose the next generation of trafficking networks. "We're using you as bait," Park said bluntly. "But controlled bait. Full surveillance, protective teams, extraction plans. They'll see through it if it's too obvious," Woojin warned. "These people survived because they're paranoid and careful. The setup has to look authentic. So we make it authentic," Adiz said, an idea forming. "We announce a new ICC investigation into emerging criminal networks in Southeast Asia. I'm the lead prosecutor. Woojin is my primary cooperating witness. We do interviews, press conferences, make ourselves very visible, very vulnerable." "That's insane," Park said. "That's exactly why it'll work. They won't expect us to paint targets on our own backs. They'll think it's arrogance, not strategy." Over the next month, they executed the plan. Adiz gave interviews about the new investigation. Woojin appeared in carefully staged photos, apparently consulting with prosecutors. They made themselves impossibly visible, impossibly tempting targets. And they waited. The attack came on a Tuesday night. Adiz and Woojin were having dinner at a restaurant in Gangnam. Public, busy, seemingly safe. The protective teams were positioned throughout the area, hidden but ready. The assassins were professionals. They'd studied the protection patterns, found the gaps, planned their approach with surgical precision. 3 of them, dressed as delivery drivers, moving through the restaurant kitchen. But Woojin had trained with men like these. He saw them before they reached the dining room. "Now," he said quietly into the mic hidden in his collar. Chaos erupted. The protective teams moved in. The assassins tried to fight their way out. Gunfire exploded through the restaurant as civilians screamed and dove for cover. Woojin threw himself over Adiz, shielding her body with his own as bullets shattered the window behind them. She felt his weight, his heart pounding against her back. His whispered, "I've got you. I've got you," in her ear. When the shooting stopped, 2 assassins were dead. 1 was in custody, and Woojin was bleeding from a shoulder wound. "I'm fine," he insisted as paramedics worked on him. "It's just a graze." "Adiz, are you hurt?" "I'm fine." "You're the one who got shot, you idiot." "Yeah, but you're alive. That's all that matters." At the hospital, while Woojin was being stitched up, Lieutenant Park brought news. "The assassin we captured is talking. He was hired by a coalition, remnants of 5 different organizations you helped dismantle. They pooled resources for one big strike. So there are more coming," Adiz said. "There were." Past tense. "We traced his communications back to the coalition's coordination point. Raid teams hit them 2 hours ago. 12 arrests, including the one who ordered your deaths." Park allowed himself a small smile. "It's over. For real this time." Adiz felt something release in her chest. A tension she'd been carrying for so long it had become part of her. "Over. Not completely," Park continued. "There will always be trials, appeals, potential threats. But the organized, coordinated danger, that's neutralized. You can breathe now." When Park left, Adiz sat beside Woojin's hospital bed, watching him sleep off the anesthesia. His shoulder was bandaged, his face peaceful in a way she'd never seen before. He'd taken a bullet for her, had literally put his body between her and death without hesitation. She thought about that first text, sent to the wrong number at 2 a.m. Thought about how a single mistake had led to this impossible connection. thought about justice and redemption and whether two people with so much darkness could actually build something light. Wu Jin's eyes opened slowly, focusing on her. Hey, hey yourself. She took his uninjured hand. You got shot. Worth it. You're alive. We're both alive. That's what matters. She paused. Wu Jin, I need to tell you something. His expression grew wary. That sounds serious. It is serious. She took a deep breath. I love you. I've been afraid to say it because it felt too complicated, too impossible. But watching you take that bullet, thinking for a moment I might lose you, I realized I'm done being afraid. I love you, all of you, the broken parts and the healing parts, the criminal you were and the man you're becoming. All of it. Wu Jin's eyes filled with tears. Adiz, I'm not finished. I love you, and I want to build a life with you. Not someday, not when things are perfect, not when we've healed completely. Now, messy and complicated and real. What do you think? He pulled her down gently with his good arm, kissed her softly. I think that's the best offer I've ever received. I think I don't deserve you, but I'm selfish enough to accept anyway. And I think I want to spend the rest of my life, however long that is, proving that a wrong text at 2 a.m. was actually the most right thing that ever happened to both of us. So is that a yes? That's a yes to everything. Life, love, messy and complicated and real. He smiled, and it transformed his scarred face into something beautiful. Together. 2 years later, the community center in Seoul's Itaewon neighborhood was packed with people. At-risk youth, former gang members, families affected by organized crime. It was the grand opening of the Phoenix Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping people escape criminal organizations and rebuild their lives. Adiz stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd. At 36, she'd stepped back from prosecution to focus on prevention and education. She still consulted on major cases, but her heart was in this, stopping the pipeline that created people like the one who'd killed her family. 7 years ago, I lost my family to gang violence, she said, her voice steady. For years, I believed justice meant punishment, revenge, watching the people responsible suffer. And yes, I pursued that. I prosecuted them. I saw them convicted. She paused, finding Wu Jin in the crowd. He stood near the back, wearing a simple black suit, a small smile on his face. But justice without prevention is incomplete. We can prosecute every criminal in the world, but if we don't stop creating new criminals, if we don't help the children being sold, exploited, and turned into weapons, then we're just treating symptoms, not causes. This foundation exists because I learned something unexpected. I learned that people can change, that the weapon can become the healer, that the criminal can become the counselor, that the destroyer can become the builder. Her eyes locked with Wu Jin's across the room. I learned that redemption is possible. Not easy, not simple, not guaranteed, but possible. And I learned that sometimes the wrong number leads you to exactly the right person. Someone who sees your darkness and doesn't flinch. Someone who understands your pain because they carry their own. Someone who loves you not despite your broken parts, but including them. After the speeches and the ribbon cutting, after the press photos and congratulations, Adiz and Wu Jin slipped away to the roof of the building, their place where they'd had so many important conversations. Your speech was beautiful, Wu Jin said, pulling her close. I meant every word. She leaned into him, watching the Seoul sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. Do you ever think about that first text? What would have happened if I'd gotten the number right? All the time. If you'd texted your therapist instead of me, you'd probably be living a normal, safe, uncomplicated life with some nice doctor or lawyer. Normal sounds boring. It does, doesn't it? He kissed the top of her head. Though I have to say, when I got that text, baby, I'm horny. I definitely wasn't expecting it to lead to dismantling international crime syndicates and building a nonprofit. Adiz laughed. The text I actually sent you was way more disturbing than I'm horny. True, but the title of our story sounds better this way. More clickable. Our story has a title now? Everything good has a title. Ours is Wrong Text. Right Person, Impossible Love. That's terrible. You have a better one? Adiz thought for a moment. How about Two Broken People Built Something Whole? I like that. Wu Jin turned her to face him. Hey, I have something for you. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple silver ring with a small black stone. It's black pearl, he explained. From the South Sea. I chose it because pearls are created through irritation. A piece of sand gets into an oyster, causes pain, and slowly, over time, the oyster transforms that pain into something beautiful. Adiz's eyes filled with tears. Wu Jin, I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. We both have too much trauma around marriage and promises. He slipped the ring onto her finger. But I'm asking you to keep building this life with me, to keep transforming our pain into something beautiful, to keep choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. Yes, Adiz whispered. To all of it. Yes. They kissed as the sun set over Seoul. Two people who'd found each other in the darkness and decided to create light together. Below them, the community center buzzed with activity. Young people finding alternatives to gang life. Former criminals building new identities. Families healing from violence. All of it possible because one woman sent a desperate text to the wrong number at 2 a.m. All of it possible because two broken people chose to see each other completely and love anyway. All of it possible because sometimes the biggest mistakes lead to the most beautiful destinations. 5 years later, Dr. Adiz Okonkwo Choi stood in front of the UN General Assembly, preparing to present her research on preventing youth recruitment into organized crime. At 41, she'd become one of the world's leading experts on restorative justice and criminal rehabilitation. Her work with the Phoenix Foundation had expanded to 12 countries across 3 continents. Her research had informed policy changes that reduced gang recruitment by 40% in targeted areas. And through it all, Wu Jin had been her partner in every sense of the word. He sat in the audience, now 45, gray-haired and scarred, but somehow more at peace than he'd ever been. He'd completed his doctorate in criminology, published 2 books on life inside criminal organizations, and become a sought-after consultant for law enforcement agencies worldwide. They'd married 3 years ago in a small ceremony, just close friends, no families since both had complicated relationships with the concept. They'd honeymooned in Lagos, where Adiz had finally been able to visit her family's graves without drowning in grief. They still had nightmares sometimes, still had triggers and hard days, still carried scars that would never fully heal. But they had each other. And they had purpose. As Adiz began her presentation, her phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it and smiled. Wu Jin, you're going to kill this speech. But just in case you need courage, remember, you once sent a horny text to a Korean Mafia boss by mistake. If you survived that embarrassment, you can survive anything. Adiz, that's the worst pep talk ever. Wu Jin, and yet it's working. You're smiling. Adiz, I love you. Wu Jin, I love you too. Now go change the world. I'll be here when you're done, just like I've been here since you texted the wrong number. Adiz put her phone away and looked out at the assembly. Hundreds of diplomats, policymakers, advocates, people who could make real change if given the right information and tools. She thought about her father, who died trying to fight corruption. Her mother, who dedicated her life to healing. Her brother, who died trying to protect their family. They'd be proud of this moment, proud of what she'd built from the ashes of their loss. And they'd probably be shocked by how she got here, through a wrong text message that led to the most right relationship of her life. Distinguished delegates, Adiz began, her voice clear and strong. I'm here to talk about redemption, prevention, and the radical idea that we can break the cycle of violence by seeing the humanity in even the most broken people. As she spoke, Wu Jin watched with quiet pride. The woman he loved was changing the world, and he got to be part of it. Not bad for a wrong number. Not bad at all. If this story absolutely destroyed you in the best way, if you cried, if you believed in second chances and impossible love, I need you to do 3 things right now. 1. Smash that like button. Seriously, destroy it because this story took you on a journey and you know it. 2. Subscribe and turn on all notifications because I'm dropping more stories like this. Stories about complicated people finding redemption. Stories about wrong numbers leading to right destinations. Stories that will make you feel. 3. Comment below.